Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever you're watching this. This is not a video I wanted to make, but I'm making it because it's the truth of being an owner-operator. I'm currently sitting at a dealership in Wisconsin. Um, yeah, and the outcome isn't good. So I'll put a couple of pictures up here, some screenshots of the spindle, my axle spindle. It's ruined. It needs to be machined and fixed, and yeah, it was not due to negligence on my part, the owner of the truck. It was due on the negligence of I had a wheel bearing and wheel seal replaced on Wednesday night. Now, here's the backstory. I had some service done on my truck Wednesday night. I was supposed to be at home. I noticed during my pre-trip that I had oil leaking from my wheel seal. So I was able to find a shop and get the truck into the shop for the night. I was stayed with the truck, so I didn't get back home until like 12 o'clock in the morning and then had to leave at 5. So I really didn't get a day off. It was spent working on the truck. However, once I left yesterday, Thursday morning, I made it to Poynette, Wisconsin to get fuel. And I stopped and just did a quick walk around. I always walk around my truck when I get fuel. And I noticed on the axle that the wheel seal was replaced, on the rim, I noticed all kinds of gear oil, and I knew there was a problem. So I'm sitting here in the truck in the shop in Wisconsin. I got the bill and everything from the company, the shop that replaced my wheel seal in Minnesota. They replaced a wheel seal in the inner wheel bearing. They didn't replace the outer wheel bearing. And what ended up happening, how I noticed I had an issue was after I left Wednesday and got my load Thursday morning, I drove about 250 miles and stopped to get fuel. Now, when I stopped to get fuel, I just walked around the truck and I saw a bunch of gear oil on my rim. So I thought it was just the flange, like the front hub was leaking oil. So I came to this shop to get them to replace the little paper gasket and tighten up the bolts. Well, upon further inspection, they realized that the shop that put in the wheel seal and bearing in Minnesota didn't torque down any of the nuts. So the bearings and everything are just free flowing on this spindle, shredding the spindle apart, along with the brand new inner bearing and the outer bearing. And the reason this receipt is important is it talks about things that they noticed that I opted not to get fixed. Nothing on this receipt says that my axle spindle is grooved, worn out, shredded. I mean, it's really bad. And what's going on right now is this shop in Wisconsin is dealing with the shop in Minnesota, and they're kind of butting heads. And the shop in Minnesota is claiming, because my truck has 600,000 miles on it, well, that axle spindle has over 500,000 miles on it. That's not our fault. And the shop here is like, well, it is your fault because everything was free flowing in there because you didn't torque down any of the bolts. None of the bolts were retorqued to the max specs when I left the shop in Minnesota. So I spent $820.38 on Wednesday and to get a wheel seal and bearing replaced. And you know what? It destroyed my axle spindle. Well, here's a quick update on this saga. Axle Doctor is going to be at the shop Monday morning to check out the spindle, the axle spindle, and fix whatever needs to be fixed on it. As of right now, it sounds like the shop in Minnesota is going to take care of all the costs with this repair. They're taking responsibility for it. In the meantime, though, I had to wait for a ride because all the loaner cars from the dealership I'm at were gone. So I got a ride to the hotel that I booked, and they overbooked the hotel. So technically right now I'm homeless or roomless. I can go back to the dealership, which is about 3 miles away, and stay in the truck. But yeah, that's the update of this continued saga